Thank you, everyone, for coming to today's final installment of Grad School Week, Be a Star. If you've been to any of the first three parts of this week, you'll know that we brought in people from within Temple University, department directors, students themselves, and alumni, as well as myself. Today, the Career Center has brought in experts from outside that are going to help you create the most competitive grad school application that you can. And I think they're going to have a lot of outstanding and interesting information to share with you. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jack to kick things off.
All right, Bob, thank you so much. Temple, happy grad week. Happy to be closing you out here. I'm a former admissions director, graduate admissions director, and a former Associate Dean of Graduate Studies right down the road at Thomas Jefferson University. So I am happy to have a Philadelphia audience, even though some of you may still be licking our collective wounds from the Phillies' loss. But the good thing is we don't have to talk about that at all for the next hour. So, all right, I'm with the academic partnerships team at ETS. Very glad again to have you with us. I know you have a bunch of other things you could be doing, but I'm glad you're spending time with us. Before I get to the introduction of our main speaker, John Augusto, I'd like to first just take care of a couple housekeeping items. You should know, as Bob mentioned, that we are recording this session, so you will be able to refer to it at a later date. Also, you can share this recording with anyone you would like. Our goal here is to spread this goodness out to the world. So if we're able to help other future graduate students along the way, we're happy to do that. So you'll receive the recording. You will also receive a PDF of the PowerPoint slides that John is going to go through today. Also, I want to mention that, as Bob noted, you can have your video off. You are currently muted to cut down background noise, but that doesn't mean that we don't want to hear that we don't want to hear from you. We do want to hear from you. So if there are thoughts or comments you have, feel free to log them in the chat. I'll be monitoring those throughout the session, and if it makes sense, I'll throw them over to John at that moment. Otherwise, we'll have time at the end for a more robust Q&A. All right, enough with housekeeping and me. On to John. John currently works as the Associate Dean for Strategic Initiatives in the College of Arts and Sciences at Georgia State University. In this role, he oversees the implementation of the college to career efforts within the college, as well as community and industry engagement. And previously, he was at the University of Kansas, where he provided key leadership in graduate education. I'll tell you on a personal note, I've been in this field in graduate education and graduate admission and graduate enrollment management for 25 years. John is a celebrity in that community. So you have the expert here to talk to you about how to put your best foot forward for graduate school. As you can tell, I'm certainly proud to work with John as a colleague. ETS is extremely happy to have him as a graduate education advisor. With that, John, I'm going to stop singing your praises and turn the floor over to you.
Oh, thanks. Hey, and Jack, the check is in the mail, just so you know. Hey, Temple University, I'm excited to be with you today. I hear the weather in Philadelphia is great, so thanks for taking time to sit with us as we think about being a star and what that means when we look at going to graduate school. So we got a number of items to cover today. We're going to leave some time for questions and answers as well. Jack's monitoring the chat. As Jack said, if you have something, a thought, idea, a question, put it in the chat so we can get it captured, because I bet if you have that question, there are 2 or 3 other students that also have the same question. Because we're going to cover the application and admissions processes. I think it's really important to start there. We're also going to kind of break down what are the elements of a strong application? What are faculty looking for? What did I look for when I sat on admissions committees? We're going to have some discussion around the interview. We're going to also think about what are our financial considerations when we're looking at going to grad school. And then finally, we're going to talk about closing the deal. Here's the thing, folks. We really need to think about it in this way. We're going to convince the admissions committee that you have the skills and the drive to be successful and contribute to their program. Because I've sat on an admissions committee, Jack has sat on an admissions committee. We know kind of have an idea of what we're looking for. And we're going to kind of pull that veil back so you can see from a faculty member's perspective. So the application and admissions process are where we start, because that's really where you should be thinking. For some of you who are rising seniors and are graduating in May 24, you're probably in the thick of this right now. If you're a junior or sophomore or freshman, you need to be thinking about this right now. So a couple of things to know. One is that applications can be a little tricky sometimes. They have two major components. Sometimes you submit things to what's called a graduate school, and other times you submit things to a graduate school and a departmental application. More and more colleges and universities are using a central system, what we call a CAS system, so you have to take that into consideration as well. When you're reviewing applications, make sure every section is complete, because attention to detail is crucial in the application process. Being admitted to a graduate school program is very competitive, right? There are some programs, for example, when I was at the University of Kansas, they would get 175 applicants and be admitting a new class of maybe 6 or maybe even 8 students. So you want to know that they have a limited number of spaces and that the applicant pool can be very large. We also want you to know that faculty are going to be selective in identifying those students to fill those spaces. And things like funding, those are also very likely limited. So we want to make sure that you're going to put your best foot forward in the application process. So when I and my colleagues are looking at admissions processes, what we're thinking about, what we're considering is we're looking at the academic background through the evaluation of things like your grades, your GRE scores. We're looking at the reputation of your undergraduate institution, which coming from Temple, you'll be fine with that. Who writes those letters of recommendation? So who's writing your letters? Who's speaking for you? What the letters say, and sometimes what the letters don't say about you. We're looking at, does the applicant have an area of research interest? We're going to do a hard review at your statement of purpose and your personal statement. We're going to also think about what work experiences you might have, what undergraduate research experiences you might have. And if you're needing to, sometimes some students, mostly international students, will take English language into assessment as well. So every department has this kind of unique process. We want to make sure you know a couple of key items when you think about that unique process. Number one is a lot of times departments, grad programs, put their admissions process on the website. So become familiar with that and kind of go in thinking, okay, this is what one department's expecting. Another department might be expecting something different, because you want to make sure you're familiar with each of those departments you're applying to, because there might be some similarity and there might be some differences. Know that when we talk about graduate admissions, oftentimes there are external influences that create one of many factors about your application, including the program goals. So you may have an application to a program that doesn't necessarily align with that program, or it may depend on the number of applicants for a year. That's a dynamic situation where sometimes the applicants are up, sometimes they're staying even, sometimes they might even be down. So it just depends a lot of the different things going on with that particular applicant year. And of course, faculty mentoring, right? We always want to make sure and keep in mind that, you know, there may be faculty members who know you, who are likely to speak up for you. That's important to know. We also want to know that oftentimes faculty members are looking at and saying, well, is this somebody I want to bring in as a grad student that I want to work with directly? And so they're going to want to make sure that they can have some support as a grad assistant, that you can come in and work with them in their research and their teaching efforts. So think of it this way. You really need to think of it as the whole package, right? We want to create a narrative. You're going to be a storyteller here, and we want you to tell your story in a very consistent way. Your application is going to show a number of different things: your educational trajectory, your talents, any type of special characteristics you have, things like your accomplishments. We want to make sure and document your responsibilities that you've taken on, your professionalism. We want to ensure that they see your interpersonal skills, your passion for the field, kind of what sets you apart, what makes you, you, if you will. And admissions committee has to know why they're choosing you. And all this is going to get your grades, all the things you write about is going to get triangulated and looked at as well with the confirmation and validation from your letter writers. So again, we're trying to tell your story. You're going to be a storyteller here, and you're going to want to make sure you have a consistent whole package. So let's kind of get into what are the parts of that story. What are the elements of a strong application? When we look at it, when we sit down as faculty members, what we're looking for is evidence, right? So what type of evidence are we looking for? We're looking for things like your cognitive skills. We're looking for your academic background. What personal attributes, grit, determination, have you demonstrated? Do you have any work experience? Do you have any interest or passions? And finally, how does your story fit with the program overall goals and mission? So where do we collect that evidence? We look at your things like your transcripts and your GPA. We look at things like GRE scores. We look at things like statement, your personal statement, but also your personal statement. And we'll talk more about how to differentiate between those two. We definitely want to read and look at your letters of recommendation, as well as your research experience and interviews. And we take that evidence and we map it onto the different attributes we're looking at. So we'll start with transcripts, right? You want to send them early, go to your registrar's office, make sure they've identified the correct addresses. Heck, nowadays you can do it all online, but make sure you get that done in a timely manner because the courses taken reflect your program of study. You want to demonstrate you've taken the necessary courses for your major. You've got the introductory courses out of the way. Maybe you've dabbled into a minor or a double major, but you're showing breadth, right? As well as depth in a particular major, but you're also showing that you've met your general education requirements. You want to be able to document and to demonstrate these attributes that you have, your ability to work well with others, leadership skills, engagement, and commitment. And there's a really great way of doing that when we look at your co-curricular activities and your extracurricular activities. So when we start to think about what are co-curricular activities, these are really things that tie well with your academic major. Oftentimes students do research experiences or internships. These two experiences, research or internships, really help you identify your interests and passions. They help sharpen your analytical, critical thinking and writing skills. They develop your ability to organize and present data, and they give you relevant information to your degree program and to your career objectives. When we look at extracurricular activities, things like your volunteer work, your professional activities, maybe you're working with student organization, maybe you're the president or the leader of the student organization. Are you involved with the community? Maybe you're doing some tutoring, maybe you're volunteering at hospitals or faith-based activities, but you always want to be able to say that in addition to your academic work, in addition to maybe getting some research or an internship or community-based research program, that you've done some extracurricular activities as well to give you that whole picture as well. Because it's important that when you do these extracurricular or co-curricular things, that you really start to think about like, what are you gaining from that? And one of the things we see is leadership and engagement, right? It's that ability to show maturity, to have persistence. Maybe you have obstacles to overcome. Maybe it's showing you patience or time management skills or the ability to prioritize, right? It's important, especially for you on the call today who are maybe in your first or second year, to think about maybe doing a few things over a sustained period of time than trying to dabble and do many things. So think about that. What are the 2 or 3 things that maybe you care the most about and focusing your energy in that area in terms of your extracurricular activities? Many students choose to take the GRE test to give them kind of that extra bump in terms of their applicant pool, right? It's really important that you consider whether or not it's required to take the GRE. And if not, consider taking the GRE to kind of give you that boost. You want to make sure that you provide as much information as all the other applicants. And sometimes scores can help balance out some of the other weaker parts of your application. If you're going to take the GRE, you need to familiarize yourself with the general test, which measures verbal reasoning, quantitative reasoning, critical thinking, and analytical writing skills, right? It's also really important to know that there's free and low-cost test prep on the GRE website. I want to speak a little bit about letters of recommendation. Oftentimes, we get a lot of questions from students about, well, who should write my letter? What should it say? So forth and so on. If you're applying for fall 24 for next year, so I'm talking to my seniors now, it really is important that if you haven't started already, start today. Start thinking about who's going to write my letters of recommendation for my grad school application. Because you want to give your recommenders time to write a strong letter of recommendation, right? You want them to be specific. Oftentimes, when I work with students on this, I say, give me a copy of your resume. I want a copy of your statement. Give me a copy of, is there something that you and I worked on? Maybe you were in one of my classes before. Maybe you worked up here in the office with me. Whatever that is, whatever our relationship has been, give me some information, more information about that. Because you want to give your recommender at least a couple of weeks to get that done, right? It really is important, too, that you get a letter or at least 2 letters from faculty in your own major, right? Because they're going to know your work well. And often, what impresses me is when I get the letter for a student done and I send it off, they'll send me a reminder. Dr. Augusto, thank you for sending me that letter, or I really appreciate you taking time to do that. Take that extra step. Send a thank you, send a reminder, make sure they know that you appreciate their effort. Who writes the letter of recommendation is often something that a lot of students have to think about. So one of the things I think about is this. Oftentimes the question is why I had a professor who got an A. Is that necessarily the best choice? You may have gotten an A in that class and done really well, but the class may be you're one of maybe 200 students. And so did that professor really get to know you personally in that class? Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. So think about that. You also want to think about, maybe this professor is really well known, distinguished professor. Is that necessarily the best choice? Oftentimes, I've read some outstanding letters from assistant professors, professors who were just starting in their career, but they were so well written and so detailed and describing the students' knowledge, abilities, and skills that stood out much better than someone who wasn't really well known in the field, but you can kind of read through the letter and understand that they probably didn't know the student very well. So think about that and think about who should be in that letter, recommender mode. And then if you've been out of school for a while, for those of you who maybe are jumping in and saying, I had this kind of gap of a couple of years, who should have more right? That's your chance to kind of re-engage and say, okay, I had this professor 4 years ago. I see on the website they're still there. I'm going to send them an email and talk to them about, I'm going to grad school. Could we sit down and have a conversation about a letter of recommendation and what that might look like? I want to shift now into personal statements and statements of purpose. So what is a personal statement? A personal statement provides additional information that we as the committee are evaluating in terms of your preparation and your aptitude. It's really going to describe your unique characteristics, kind of really give you a chance to shine and say, this is who I am as a person, right? And you really get to say, these are the challenges I face, the barriers I face in my pursuit of overall. Again, the personal statement is about you personally. The statement of purpose, that's really what I would call the business case. You're out there in front of the admissions committee and you're saying, based on my academic interests, here's how I academically fit with your program, based on their research, based on the program, based on your professional experiences you're looking to gain. That's what makes you a strong candidate. And you want to make sure that you include information that is targeting the skills, the academic research, the academic courses you've taken, professional experiences that really tells that story in a powerful way. So like we said, the personal statement, it's personal. It's to be specific to your goals, your experiences. It really should show that passion, personality, and potential. It puts a face on some of the more objective and quantitative credentials, and it reminds us as reviewers that you have unique experiences and backgrounds and points of view that we want to take into consideration. There's some really good examples of some prompts that we've put here to kind of get you thinking about, well, what's going to be asked of me, like this one right here. Describe challenges or barriers that you have had in facing within higher education. What motivated you to persist? How did you overcome them? What was the evidence of your persistence, progress, or success? Again, be expecting, sometimes they'll tell you that in the application, but be expecting to get that prompt to get because they want to know more about you. Put that on the front foot and really put your best foot forward. A lot of programs are asking for how can you contribute to their overall goal of diversity. And so I think it's really important that if you've done like community and service, engaged in any type of service efforts or programs, that you really identify that as something that you're very passionate about, right? You also want to make sure that you can demonstrate your ability and knowledge of working with people that are different from you. So make sure you highlight some experiences that show your drive and motivation to succeed in spite of barriers. And if you come from a non-traditional background or understanding of experiences from folks different from you, like groups of underrepresented students, that might be a time for you to shine and say, well, this is how I know my perspective. I was doing volunteer work with this community, which is very different than my community, and here's what I learned from it. Next, I want to turn to the statement of purpose, because it really allows you to kind of follow the guidelines that the grad school is going to give you. Oftentimes, a statement of purpose has a specific kind of format they're looking for, right? It really is important with your statement of purpose and with all the statements you write, that you write it, that you rewrite it, and that you rewrite it again. Take it to the Temple Writing Center. Take it to faculty members and let them critique it. This is probably the first time, more than your college essay, this is the first time where your voice definitely matters. What you say, your professionalism, how you say it, it really does matter. You want to make sure that you stay on the positive, and if there is something negative that you want to highlight, that you explain what the case was, but more importantly, what did you learn from it? They want to walk away saying who you are, and just as important, why graduate school. A statement of purpose really gets you a chance to show that you're familiar with the grad program and even the university. So be consistent in presenting your ideas. Make sure with every good story, there's a solid beginning, there's a hearty middle, and there's a good end. Explain, and like I said, anything unusual in your academic journey. Maybe you had to stop out, maybe you worked a lot of hours, whatever, maybe you transferred to schools. But we know that the expectations are going to vary by field. So sociology is going to look a lot different than, let's say, chemistry, right? It's going to be different by faculty reviewer as well. Sometimes some programs are more academically focused. You're going to be working on a thesis or dissertation. Some programs might be more professionally focused, where you're going to be working and be after 2 or 3 years earning a master's degree that's going to put you into a specific career field. But your specificity and sophistication on these essays are much, much more deeper and broader than you wrote when you applied and went to Temple. So here's a good example. The starting, again, is important. I'm interested in your program because the faculty at your members at your university are conducting research in areas of my methodological, theoretical, and geographic interests. For example, Dr. A has conducted research on the coastal populations of the Pacific, including the Sumas. Again, being specific really allows you to show that you have a sophistication, a maturity, and that you've done your homework, and you're very specifically focusing on this program for very specific reasons. You want to avoid those kind of simple general statements that a lot of times happens. I always wanted to go to grad school. I want to go to grad school because I love to read or learn new things, but I want to make a difference. I mean, we all want to make a difference, but your chance is to tell exactly how you see yourself making a specific difference. You also want to make sure that we're demonstrating that experience, right? And in a much more intentional way. I like this. Mathematics, the language of the universe, has enthralled me since I was first introduced to algebra in 6th grade. Right? It again talks about it in very specific ways to your interests as well. You know, they always say, hook them with that first line, get them captivated, right? And now oftentimes I talk to students about writing any statement. I say, write the middle first. The middle is really the heart of the story. And oftentimes it can be some of the easiest thing to write because you already have that in your head and you're just flowing it out. Then write the beginning and then write the end, which is a little different than a lot of the essays you've probably written. Also think about it this way. you want to make sure you get that first sentence right. And the best way to do that is to really encapsulate what you're going to say. And this is a good example. In college, I learned the mechatronics are not only entrained millions of people, but can also help improve the quality of life of those with disabilities. Again, great first statement. You really want to make sure that you provide them a convincing offer. What makes you different, unique? How's your interest match faculty research? If you've talked with a faculty member via email, or you know a faculty member because of maybe undergraduate research, be sure and mention them by name. And if you have particular faculty members who you've read their research or they're interested in working with you, make sure that they're still in that department and make sure that you mention them as well. This is a good example of kind of how that all looks when you tie it together. I wish to pursue a Ph.D. in biomedical engineering with an emphasis in medical devices to initiate a patient care design focus in the field of medical device design and development. By design with the patient in mind, I can develop customized medical products for a wide variety of users, patients with special needs, clinics in developing countries, or your average everyday users. Notice the different details brought in that align probably with the program who has a PhD in biomedical engineering, that has that works in that field of medical device design and development. So again, tying that specifically to that program. With graduate education, whether it's a master's or doctoral level, you want to make sure that you can explain some comfort level with research, with understanding the methodologies. So for some, that might be more quantitative in nature, working maybe you did statistics, or maybe more qualitative in nature. Maybe you're looking at different narratives or different exploratory ways, but making sure that you understand that in this department, in this field, this is how research generally looks. I documented detailed field notes, collected and coded a variety of student work examples, and conducted in-depth, semi-structured interviews for those students who ... You're demonstrating that you have an understanding of the methodologies for that particular discipline. So I'll give you some final considerations as we start to think about your statement of purpose. Again, your statement is personal, but not too personal. Don't divulge your full life story, right? It's just one part of the overall picture. You want to discuss your relevant academic, volunteer, and employment experiences, right? Show that preparation for in-depth research. Show that you're ready. I think it's also real important that you find ways to identify your strengths and really say, these are my strengths, but I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to engage with faculty, engage with my colleagues, receive feedback as part of my graduate school experience. You need to be able to accept constructive criticism and to be a good listener. And most certainly, if you use a source, cite it. I know ChatGPT is out there. I use it sometimes. It's a great tool, but we want to hear your statement. Please, please, please don't plagiarize. So I want you to think about also what's life after grad school. So I'm going to get a master's degree. Maybe some of you are going to get a doctoral degree. How do you want to utilize that? What does that look like? For some of you, that might look like I'm going to go work in the government. There's a think tank area or a specific area of research I'm doing with the government. Some of you might go into business. Some of you might be thinking academic research and becoming a professor. Whatever that topic is, whatever that area is, some of you may be thinking entrepreneurship and owning your own company. Whatever that is for you, start to think about how that is going to impact you, where you go to grad school, what interests you. And again, you don't have to have concrete plans, but having some ideas is going to help you as you go through this process. Key important thing, don't be sloppy. Have somebody proofread. I always say, I'm not the best writer, I just get the best editors. That's what the Writing Center is for. Your faculty can help you with that as well. But make sure you're getting your essays, the things you're submitting in written form, make sure they're proofread. So you do all that work, everything's great, you submit all that stuff in, and they say, hey, John, we want you to come and do an interview. We're super excited about your application. We want you to come in person and meet and talk. This is a quote I put together because it came out of a conversation I had with a faculty member. And this is for a doctoral program where they're going to spend $160,000 on this particular student, right? 5, maybe 6 years at $40,000 with stipend and tuition and all that. Um, if I'm going to spend that kind of money, I'm going to want to make sure I want to interview this person. When they leave, I want to know their favorite ice cream, what's their biggest fear, and what makes them get up in the morning and work late at night. They're going to really want to understand you as a particular applicant. Now in 2023, how we interview potential grad students has changed a little bit. A lot of times we're looking at maybe doing remote, online interview. Some programs are looking at doing just in person. Some are doing a little bit of both. The purpose hasn't changed. The purpose is this. They want to better understand you. What makes you tick, right? They're going to recruit you. The interview is done to bring you in, to let you see things, talk to students, talk to alumni, talk to faculty, right? Many times, many programs will use the interview to offer you admissions, but it's also the opportunity that you can take to facilitate more learning about them, about the program, the requirements, the funding, all those things. Talking to people, getting to understand more about the program than just a website. There are certain rules for the interview. You interview the faculty and students, and you will be interviewed by those same faculty and students. One of the key things I always say is you're always at the interview. It's really important that you understand that from the minute you leave your flat, your apartment, and go to that interview, you're always at the interview. You need to relax, you need to tell the truth, and just be yourself. So who's going to be in that interview? You're going to be talking with people from a different lab, faculty from that grad program. If you're in the non-lab sciences, you're still going to be interviewing faculty who you might be taking class with. Definitely going to talk with, and you're going to want to talk with current grad students. A lot of times, university administrators are involved with this, or the department directors are involved with this. A lot of programs, especially if they're professionally oriented, use alumni in that interview process as well. So before the interview, sit down, give yourself some time, and familiarize or refamiliarize yourself with the department, the school, the community, right? Go back and reread that application. What did you say? Always come with a list of questions, right? One of the things I tell students is you might meet with 3 different faculty members. If you ask the same question from all 3 faculty members, you should get a similar response, and that helps you get information about the program, and you triangulate from the 3 different faculty members exactly what they're all saying. You want to make sure that you can get a list of individuals that you meet. If you don't get the list beforehand, make sure you write down the list of folks that you met with. You always want to ask what's appropriate to wear. You always want to make sure that you email any contact that you have in that department saying, hey, I'm going to be interviewing there, Dr. Smith, in a couple of weeks. I'm excited to meet you in person. Look forward to our upcoming interview in the next couple of days. You want to make sure that you, again, go back and get that application reviewed. Make sure you understand exactly what you told them and you're ready to talk about it in the interview. During the interview, you're going to see things like classroom space, lab space, campus. It's going to be kind of feel like a whirlwind approach. It's really important. You just sit up, you smile, and you speak clearly. I always say it's a conversation with a purpose, and they're looking for you. So be ready to participate. It's really important you listen too. And again, asking questions. And again, we do things in hybrid mode sometimes. Some programs are doing them all in person. Some are just doing only virtual. So be ready, being flexible in terms of what approach they're using for that particular grad program. After the interview, write thank you messages, right? It's so important. You take 5 minutes to write down 2 or 3 quick messages. Thanks for interviewing with me. I learned so much about this program. I'm really, excited about my opportunity of looking there to go to grad school, right? Sometimes you can ask for feedback. Maybe they had specific things that they could give you feedback on during the interview. And if they've asked for any additional information or maybe, something that you did that wasn't captured in your application, that you follow up with that requested information after the interview. Financial considerations. Oftentimes, uh, students who are applying to grad school leave this until the very end. Like, I just want to go to this program, and this is the program I'm looking at. When I was at the University of Kansas, they'd say, well, I've applied to this program in California, and they're paying me $4,000 more to go there. I'd say, that's great. I'm glad you're looking at that program, but you do realize if you're going to live in California, the cost of living is very different than it would be in living in Kansas. So you want to make sure that you get the information you need. And one of the ways to do that is to think about what are the sources of funding I can get to support me during grad school. So definitely a lot of grad programs, universities offer fellowships and scholarships. Make sure if you're getting offered a fellowship that you look at the length of time. Are there any conditions to that award? In addition to what's campus-based, what we call either the university or department level, oftentimes there are federal or professional associations that offer these types of outside funding as well for students who want to go to grad school. If you haven't done that work already, please take time to talk to people, do some searches, find out what funding is available outside. In addition, you can get student loans to go to grad school. Please consider them only as a last resort. As we all know, student loans have to be repaid, and there's a payment per month. So if you're going to take student loans, have a plan in place to do that. If at all possible, please try not to do that. Many programs, especially at the doctoral level, will provide funding for 4 or 5 years, depending on the program. But it's really important that you look at all possible sources of funding first before considering student loans. So what's offered when you get financial support? There are many things. There's a thing like a stipend. That could be for a monthly stipend for 12 months. That could be they provide tuition payment. A lot of grad programs are providing medical care coverage. So you have a basic medical care plan. Some programs are providing research support. So you have like $1,000 for research support, or there's a graduate student travel fund that you can take advantage of if you want to travel to a conference. And some programs are even offering housing allowances to where, because the cost of living there is so expensive, they're subsidizing your housing as well. Some key considerations is to get everything in writing. The professor might give you a call and say, hey, I'm calling to let you know we're going to offer you this fellowship or this research assistantship. That's great. I look forward to receiving your email documenting the details of that offer, right? You want to make sure, if possible, to take a little money and plan for the unexpected, because something's going to come up, $100 or $200, and you want to have a couple $100 set aside just in case something happens, you have that as an extra resource. And know that different awards are given and are available at different times. So you kind of want to think about, if I'm going to be there 5 years for a doctoral program, what does my funding look like in all 5 of those years? So you've done your due diligence, you've got your applications, you've done your interviews, they've given your financial support to you in writing, you're all set. It's time to close the deal. There's a saying in golf, you drive for show, you putt for dough. Closing the deal is important. You have to do it, and you have to do it with your priorities in mind. For some of you, the academic program is the top priority. For others of you, location might be a top priority. Mentoring might be a priority. The atmosphere when you went there, was it something conducive for you? Are there teaching and research opportunities? Is that program offering you plenty of financial support? All these things come in mind as you start to zero in on your priorities and figure out which program is best for you. In addition to that, it really is a two-party process. The department's going to make an offer with an offer of financial support, right? And you have to accept or decline that offer. The times vary about that. And so some may say, here's your offer. It's March 1st. You have until April 15th. Another program may say, here's your offer. It's March 1st. You have until March 10th to tell us if you're going to accept it or not. So as you go through this process, right, keep thinking, be prepared to make the decision. Many programs use April 15th as a deadline, but as I said, some programs will want to have that deadline earlier. Before you make a decision, all right, Make sure you have all your things in a row. So you're going to get that letter of acceptance, this letter of support. You've gotten that. You've had the chance to either virtually or in person visit campus. A lot of students sometimes, when they come to me and they're struggling on which program to pick, we do a real simple cost benefits. Like, what's the benefit of this program? Write them all down. What are the costs? Not just financial costs, but like maybe you're moving across country and you're leaving your family behind in your where you're at right now. Maybe the cost is that, it's going to cost me to have a car there. There's not good public transportation. All those factors come into mind. Go back to that list of priorities we just mentioned. Which ones are driving are the biggest drivers for your decision? And please take time to talk to a mentor or a friend. And once you've made the decision, I want you to go to bed that night, sleep on it, and wake up in the morning. If it's still the same school, you've made the right choice. So you're ready to make that choice and you're ready to close the deal. You're going to email your acceptance. Thank you. I'm very excited to start grad program in the fall. I'm super excited. I've got financial support. I'm really excited about it. I'm going to be meeting with Dr. Smith in a couple of weeks. Thanks everyone for all their work, right? If some particular staff member has helped you with that, go and say, I really appreciate all the work you did for me, Joanne. I'm excited to be coming to the grad program this fall, right? It's also important the students get ready to make that physical move if they're moving out into a different part of the country or maybe a different part of the world. But there's an emotional move as well. Jack mentioned I spent a lot of time at the University of Kansas. When I would be there at the University of Kansas, I'd often see students, in that first semester. And you could tell like they were happy with their academic program, but there's still that kind of emotional move. You got to kind of get that in mind and say, okay, for the first time maybe in your life, you might be moving away from family and friends, and get ready for that because it's going to be a big change for you. So you've closed the deal, you've gotten all that done. Please, please, please do not burn your bridges, right? If you've gone to program A, tell program B, thank you very much for all that you've done for me, but I've chosen to go to program A, right? Again, you may want to transfer to program B, so keep that bridge open. You may want a future job there, but definitely they're going to be your future colleagues. They're going to read your papers at conferences, right? They're going to be interacting with them at conference presentations. So make sure you set yourself up as a professional and don't burn bridges. So with that, I turn it over to my favorite time, which is the question period. I see we got a couple of comments in the chat already. So Jack, let's fire away with the Q&A section.
We do. First, John, and I do want to touch on a question that came up in another session that has to do with interviews, particularly group interviews. So I'm going to table that for right now. But the question we have here that we should address first, is it a good idea to reach out to faculty members in email telling them you'll include them in your application? And I'm assuming this is a PhD candidate.
Yeah, I think here's the approach I tell students often. Number one is if there's a particular faculty member you're interested in doing research with, go to the website and read their bio. In the description of their work, they will probably list a journal article they've written. And oftentimes you can get access to that journal article. Read the abstract because every research article will have an abstract. You might understand maybe half of it, and that's okay. You're going to read it though as best you can. You're going to take it to a faculty member at Temple and say, okay, I've got some questions about this article that was written because I'm interested in this faculty member and their research. Then at that point, you're going to say, I'm applying, dear Professor Smith, I read your article, blah, 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 blah. I have some more questions about it. Would love to talk to you about it. I want you to know I'm applying to your program and I'm interested in working with you. And I will be mentioning this when I apply to your program because you haven't met yet with Professor Smith, right? So you're offering to meet with him,
Yes, I'm thinking
that you're including that. But you also want to make sure that with Professor Smith that you told him you're reading the research. In other words, you're an active participant in the research community, and you want to make sure and communicate to him. Was there a follow-up on that too, as well, I think?
Well, yeah, there is, but I want to, I'm concerned that there may be folks who will want to drop off, and I want to share this before they do.
Okay.
So because you all have attended today, anyone out there who has to take or wishes to take the GRE test, the GRE general test, know that you will receive $30 off if you use this specific unique discount code. So this is specifically for your attendance today. So TU 10 26 23 30. I'm going to leave it up there, just so folks can have it, and write it down. Again, it'll be in the PDF of the slides that you will receive. All right. So getting back to the chat, John, a question that came up in a last session, but I think is important to address here, has to do with the interview and specifically a group interview. So we all know that there are moments where if you're applying to specific programs, they require either a virtual interview or an in-person interview. And in some cases, if it's a program where there's a very large application pool and a limited number of seats, it might be a group interview. Mm-hmm. And the question really kind of came down to, how do you best function in a group interview environment? What are the protocols? What are the rules? How should you be interacting? So I've teed it up enough. I'll turn it over to you.
No, it's a great tee up. And I know, Jack, you and I have talked about this, and we both have similar ideas, and I'd love to get your input on it as well. I'll give kind of three, I'll call them tips about how to do group interviews. Number one is, if you know you're going to do a group interview beforehand, take a minute and write down 1 or 2 items that you want to make. Like if there's a question or a particular area of research, a question is always a good thing to have. A statement, not so much. Questions invite people in, statements are put out. So when you're doing a group interview, you want to show you can bring people in, because what they're looking for when we do a group interviews is 2 things. One is just the conversation. What does the conversation look like? But also, how well do you work with others? Because that's the second thing. Know that the interview is about working well with others, okay? And know that you really get a chance to demonstrate that. Virtually, it's a little harder to do because we're in like a virtual Teams environment or a virtual Zoom environment, but you can be done. And in person, it's a little easier to do. And the third thing is this: if you are in person, when someone's asking a question or talking, make eye contact with them. If all you do is look down at your notes and don't make eye contact, what you do with your nonverbals is say, I'm not really interested in what you're saying. I'm more interested in trying to make my next point. So one of the things we can do by showing that we're good with groups is we demonstrate how we listen, right? We make eye contact, we shake our head sometimes. I know it feels a little awkward, but the more you can active listen and demonstrate that in the interview, the better off you'll be.
Yeah, agreed. And the same is true, right, virtually. You don't have to be staring directly at the camera like I'm doing right now, because that can be a little bit off-putting. But try not to be talking over here with the camera, right? You want to still be interacting in a way that shows you're present and you're paying attention. And the other thing I would just mention is group interviews are not a competition. So faculty and admissions committees are not putting you in a group interview to, in a Lord of the Flies scenario, to pit you against others and see, will the best survive? That's not what it's about. To John's point, are you able to collaborate in ways that are valuable and meaningful and relevant? That's really the essence of what folks are trying to accomplish in that scenario. All right. And Bob, I see you've added in some resources here that, of course, the Career Center has, probably curated best practices. So take advantage of that. All right. Maya has a question. Is relationship or field of study more impactful for letters of recommendation. So her example, which I think provides the context here. I have good
Yeah.
relationships with faculty, but they're not related to the program I'm applying to.
I think academic skills transfer. So the ability to ask good questions, the ability to follow through in a timely manner, the academic skills you gain in, let's say, biology, those transfer if you're going to apply to a PhD program in neuroscience. Now, the biologist may not have the specific knowledge of field of study, but they're going to have the general knowledge, right? Oftentimes, some of the more interesting letters I've read have been the following. I am a professor of philosophy at Georgia State University, and I'm writing this letter on behalf of Jack. Jack's a wonderful student. I had him for 3 different classes, and it's this beautiful, eloquent story of Jack's hard work, determination, came to see me in office hours, got A's in all my classes, really pushed himself intellectually, showed that he could do this, and I know he's very interested in a career in a PhD program in neuroscience. Now, philosophy and neuroscience, you wouldn't think, oh, they don't have the same thing. But what we're looking for is not so much your subject matter knowledge. What we're looking for are those skills that translate, whether you're doing philosophy, PhD, a neuroscience PhD, a PhD in business. In other words, those academic skills, those things like grit, determination, did you have problems, how'd they solve the problems? Those are the things we're looking for as faculty members. And I think that, so to answer the question specifically, relationship, if you can show that relationship and show it in a very strong manner, the field of study, if it's not there, we'll pick it up. Now, definitely want to have at least one letter in the field of study that you're looking for, at least that one letter. But oftentimes with interdisciplinary programs, it might be one letter from the discipline, a couple of other letters from other places.
Great. All right, Bendu, just so you know, I did lower your hand because I think you were raising that because you had a question earlier that we answered, so I lowered it. If I shouldn't have lowered it, then raise it again. All right, John, with that, I think we've tackled the questions. And again, we're going to be providing that PDF of the deck. So if you do want that coupon code, you can use it. Just remember that you have to register by November 26th. So it gives you a good month to get registered. And as long as you're registering for a test date by March 31st, you'll be able to get that $30 off. And remember that the GRE is now a 2-hour assessment. So it's been shortened from 4 hours to 2 hours. So hopefully that makes it a better test taker experience. That was the goal. That was the goal. All right. Well, Bob, thank you so much for hosting us. John, if you have any parting words of wisdom before we go, if not, I'll turn it over to Bob.
I would just say take advantage of the resources you have at Temple. It's an outstanding university. If you haven't done so, go to the Career Center, get advice. If they can answer the question, they'll tell you how to answer the question, show you how to answer the question. Take advantage of the resources you have. They're there for you.
Great. Thank you very much to not only our audience who came today or those of you watching later, but especially to both of you, Jack and John, for bringing your expertise to our university. It's well received and very valuable. So I appreciate you doing that for us today.